Galimera, galispera, galinichta, no matter where in this wild, wacky, and sometimes wonderful world you might be. Thank you for making the Highbury Squad part of your day. The hamstring horror show continues, the news nobody wanted to hear, but we have calm heads in the house to discuss. Is the season over? Let's talk to our very special guest, one of your favorites.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Thanks indeed for making it. Lots of Arsenal shows going live right now. With the meltdown that is the Kai Havertz injury. So if you're listening on replay, please make sure you let us know your comments in the YouTube section. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, thanks also for making us part of your day. He's back, author, journalist, and all-round epic writer, Mr. Charles Watts. Welcome back to Squad Central.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. Doing okay considering the news today, trying to just keep a calm head about it. Before we get...
You're the only one with a calm head.
Before we kick off, good evening, squaddies. Hi, everyone in live chat. Make sure that you listen to our Chief Like Officer, Tammy Steele, always. Hit that like button. It helps the show. You had a very special... Our squaddies love a celebration, especially when things are a little low. And there's nothing more they love than to wish someone a happy birthday. And you had a very special evening last night with your dad, the reason why you became an Arsenal fan. 80th birthday for the old man, is it, Charles?
It was the big 80, yeah, and a big celebration yesterday. So that went well. Slightly tempered by the fact about halfway through it, we saw we both learnt the news that Kai Havertz had suffered a hamstring problem. Didn't know the full extent of it at that stage, but we both sort of collective sort of gasp when we both saw and heard the news. But yeah, other than that, it was a very good day, and he enjoyed his birthday. And yeah, 80 still going strong. I tell you what, if I'm as fit, healthy, and mobile as he is at 80, I'll be a very happy man indeed.
Yeah, well, God bless your dad, and happy birthday to him from everyone here at Squad Central. We wish him the very best, and so happy you had a good night. Nothing like the Arsenal to ruin your morning, though, Charles. Let's start at the top in terms of digesting the news of Kai Havertz and the hamstring injury. He's not the first. Martinelli also out with a hamstring injury, as well as Saka, and it's always scary when players need surgery. We've seen players like Reece James kind of bounce back poorly from hamstring injuries. How have you digested this news about Kai?
Not very well, I have to admit. It's tough. I mean, I think my overwhelming thought or feeling when David broke the news today, that obviously it was basically as bad as we could have possibly feared when we first got the news that it was a hamstring injury, and then David reported that he was out for the season. I think my first thought was disappointment, obviously, but it was just it just felt so predictable that something like this was going to happen. And the fact it's followed on, hot on the heels of what happened with Gabriel Martinelli as well, just sort of made it even worse. And, I was at Wolves a couple of weeks ago in the press box, and, at full time, I watched Kai Havertz slump to the floor. He genuinely couldn't walk. He couldn't get off the ground, and he had to be sort of lifted off the ground by the medical staff. And then he just about made it over to the away fans, and he did walk off the pitch, but he just looked absolutely physically done. And obviously at that point, the transfer window is still open. And I just looked at it, and a few of us were sort of talking about it afterwards. And we're just like, that has to be a real sort of wake-up call. Seeing Havertz in that sort of state has to be a real wake-up call. They simply have to help him. And the fact that didn't happen, and they've left themselves so exposed to something like this happening, that I think we all could have predicted happening. It just feels like this was an entirely avoidable situation. A, in terms of not overplaying Havertz, and B, protecting yourself if the worst was to happen. And they've basically done none. And that's why I think there's just incredible frustration amongst the fan base, I think, at this news today. And I can absolutely understand every ounce of that frustration.
Yeah. And it really, I don't think this is indefensible. I've definitely gone on the offensive to defend the owners, to defend the hierarchy, to defend Mikel Arteta, the way they have backed him, the way he has kind of carte blanche to run things as he wishes. But what you say and what other fans are saying is completely true. And I don't think there's avoiding it. So I don't want to kind of say who's to blame, but I guess I'm asking who's to blame. It's funny, Charles, because I did a show where weeks and weeks ago, where I talked about Mikel and the Cronkies, who's to blame when things go well, who's to blame when things go wrong. We did this SWOT analysis with Andrew Mangan, Arsblog, and a State of the Union, kind of, looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats. And it seems to me like, when you're talking about a striker being negligible, not buying a striker, not just in January, but over the last 5 seasons, where do you think the blame lies? And I'll tell you kind of what I think, and then I'll let you go. Not let you go from the show, but let you riff. I think that we have really good owners who empower people to do their jobs. And I don't think we're at that stage now where you can point the finger at the Cronkies and say they don't give, the executives on Mikel money, especially after, they sanction $100 million pound signing of Declan Rice. The absence of Adu and his departure, is that being underplayed? Is there more to the story? For me on this one, it seems like it's somewhere in the middle. A makeshift team, not Richard Garlick or Tim Lewis, but, a rookie in the director of football role who may not have the prowess, the art of the deal. I feel like and I don't want to say you've met the Cronkies, we've spoken to Josh. Of course, a lot of the times people will tell you what you want to hear. But when I look at their pedigree in sports in general, and people hate it when I compare them to the American sports teams, but if people think they don't want to win the Premier League and the Champions League, I think they're kind of mad. So where do you think the blame lies in this chapter where we're at right now, and in particular with January, but also prior?
It's tough to really label, I don't think, sort of blame on one specific person. I think that the strength of Arsenal over the last few years, since Arteta arrived, has kind of been the collective. I think the owners have done a lot of good things. I think obviously the appointment of Arteta was a really good one. The relationship between Arteta and Edu was really, really strong, and it went in the same direction, and that's really helped the club grow and get to the point where we are now. So I think collectively that was their strength, but I also think collectively that was kind of the failure of it. And I don't really look, January was bad. The failure to do anything in January was really, really bad. But I look at the main failure in terms of the summer. January is always a difficult window to work with. And I know people hate hearing that. And there was definitely options that Arsenal could have explored this January that they ultimately didn't or chose not to. But I think you go back to the summer, and that was the real issue for me, because that's when the business should have been done. There should have been, going into the season basically just with Havertz and Jesus, who you didn't know if you could rely on his fitness as your only 2 strikers. That wasn't good enough for me. And, they tried to sign Sesko in the summer. When that didn't happen, they obviously decided against spending that money elsewhere. And I think that's ultimately where the really big failure comes from in terms of the attack. January, they needed to react. They needed to react. And I know full well that the approach going towards January was, we're probably not going to do much business in this window, and anything we will do is just in reaction to anything that happens, which is the right course of action, I think, going into January. But the fact is they needed to react because things did happen. You lost Saka on December the 21st.
Mm-hmm.
On New Year's Eve, you lost Ranieri. Obviously, it wasn't that long term, but you lost Ranieri. A couple of weeks into the January window, you lost Jesus. If you're not reacting to that, then I don't know what you're ever going to react to when it comes to January window. You went into the window short already, and then you lost Jesus for the season. So you're even shorter. They simply had to do something, even if it wasn't ideal. And I know there's been lots of talk about, you can't just get a body in. We did that at Raheem Sterling, and look, that hasn't really worked. I kind of understand that argument, but it got to the stage where Arsenal basically do need just bodies, even if they are just to come off the bench for half an hour to go. Look at Newcastle, the defeat at Newcastle, for example, in the Cup. Havertz stayed on for 95, 100 minutes, played 100 minutes of that game with injury time. The game was done and dusted after half an hour. We knew that. We knew Arsenal were out. We certainly knew Arsenal were out after 15 minutes when the second goal went in. Yet there was no, Havertz had to stay on the pitch for those final 40 minutes. Like, why? Because you got no options on the bench. So, January was really poor. The lack of reaction to what had gone on has just left Arsenal in this horrible position. But I do look back at the summer and the failure to address the situation then as a real failure. But sort of going back to your original question, it's really tough to portion blame on it. In January, the Watkins bid, you cannot tell me, and I don't know this for fact, I haven't been told it, but you cannot tell me that Mikel Arteta would have been sitting there worrying about an extra 10, 15 million for Watkins. He would have wanted that deal, or he did want that deal done, and he would not have been squabbling over the 10, 15 million or whatever the difference would have possibly been for Arsenal to maybe get Villa to make a decision before they sold Duran. That's a club thing. That's not an Arteta thing. That was a club who decided not to go that extra step, I think, in the sort of price to get Villa to the table. I just do not believe that Arteta would have, he wanted Watkins. I just don't believe he would have squabbled. He knew the importance of getting that signing done. So I think that was probably a club decision rather than a manager's decision. But that's not absolving Arteta of any blame in this, because his record, quite frankly, of signing forwards since he's arrived has not been good. And it has to change in the summer, but obviously by then I think that's going to be too late.
I put, you make some really great points. I put this picture up. We had Sammy Mockbell on, who had broken the 40 million bid story. And, he talked a little bit about, the willingness of Arsenal to go back. And there's someone in chat that just wrote, Matthew, can't always wait for the perfect timing. He who dares wins. I'm going to get to kind of Mikel and management players, but do you think, because he's so driven, such a perfectionist, eyeballs the team, plans the future the way he wants? You talk about the summer. So many people make the really great point, and you did, about, come on, you lost Saka on December 21st. Be adaptable. You want to win now. You really want to challenge for the league. The PSR seems to be in a good place, of course. With FFP, that could still be an issue, but the PSR seemed to be flatlined and resolved, Charles. Is Mikel saying no? Or is someone saying to him, it's either Watkins now or Sesko in the summer? You can't have both. People talk about Rory Delap and other players, but the Watkins came up, Premier League experience. He loves the club. He's a supporter of the club. He's 29 years old. I don't think that's past the sell-by date, the way players look after themselves these days as well. Do you think it's a case of him saying, no, that's not my player, I don't want him, or them saying it's either this guy now or that guy in the summer?
I don't think he would have said no to that. I think he would have paid whatever money. He would have been happy with whatever money was spent to bring Watkins in. I really don't. And it probably would have meant no Sesko in the summer, but the fact that Arsenal actually went for Watkins suggests to me, Arteta was behind that deal. I just think that the financial situation on that, I think that's a club decision. I really don't think it's Arteta. And I haven't had that for fact. I wouldn't believe any manager, Arteta or any manager, in the situation that they're in January, with desperate for players, would have said, no, let's not sign him because Villa are asking 10 million more than we're potentially willing to go for him. I just don't believe any manager would do that, especially someone like Arteta who's so desperate to win. So I think the club have taken the decision, and that's their prerogative. And maybe they'll look back to the summer and say, well, we backed you signing Marino and Calafiori. You're not really playing them too much, so we're gonna wait now till this coming summer, and it's up to you to get the best out of the squad that you chose, a few months ago. So I can get it, but for me, I agree with you, by the way. I know there was a lot of negativity about Watkins when that came out, which I was really surprised at. I'd have loved Watkins at Arsenal, and I agree. Right, he joined when he was 28, and that didn't turn out too badly. And so just because he's 29, I don't think I don't think it would have been a poor signing at all. It was definitely a win now type signing, but I was well behind that. But I think Arsenal just dallied. There was an opportunity there, but they had to act a lot sooner than they did with Watkins. They waited right till the end of the window to make that move. By the time they finally sort of really pushed for it, the Duran to Saudi stuff was happening, and Villa were only going to ever sell one striker, and when it was always going to be Duran when that money came in from Saudi Arabia, and that just ended Arsenal's sort of attempts to get Watkins before it had really begun. But why wait until the end of the month to try and push that deal across the line? If you really want Watkins or you want any striker, do it at the start of the month. At least start the process of it at the start of the month, especially when you lost Saka, like you said, on December 21st.
Yeah.
To wait until that late in the window to try and lure away or prize away, a star striker of another Premier League team who are competing for a Champions League spot and in the Champions League was always going to be an incredibly difficult deal to do.
Yeah, I put Dell's question up for you. The listeners are going to lob in some questions for you too. Why did they not strike earlier in January window rather than try to panic? I don't think, was it panic?
I think it probably was by the end.
Was it?
You were probably on the back of the Jesus. I think even before Jesus got injured, I'm not sure they would have done anything. I think Jesus was the thing that tipped him over the edge. And what was that? Mid-January, sort of January the 10th, something like that, when he went down in the United game. I can't remember the date. But I think when Saka went, I still, from what I've heard and discussions I've had, that the belief was then we've still probably just got enough. I think it was once Jesus went, they were like, right, we've really actually got to do something now. I do feel like towards the end of the month, it was panic. It's tough to dress it up any other way than panic when you're into the final few days of the window and you start throwing bids around.
Yeah. Sapphire in the house. Good evening. Welcome. I think when Adu was there, he backed Arteta up. Without him he had no one to back his request. Looks like Ato, and I'm probably bastardizing his name, is a yes man. And I wanted to put Sapphire's comment up because it leads into kind of just going back to the slide I put up for you earlier. The departure of Adu, this is just my Greek gut talking and my personal opinion, not based on any fact or conversation I've had with anybody at the club. It feels to me there's more to his departure, Charles, and it seems to me that maybe there's talk of Mikel gaining more power, Adu wanting more power. Maybe Adu wanting more control. Maybe Adu thinking that he's taken the team as far as he can go with knowing kind of what was coming in the future, the sustainability model, the fiscal responsibility. Adu signed some good players. They had some hits together. They had some misses. There's no doubt the two of them rebuilt the culture of the club. What do you know about, what's your instinct tell you? And also, not having an Adu who does have some respectability in the marketplace, and then you've got a rookie kind of going out to try and make deals. Was the rookie really on the front lines? Was it Richard Garlick or Tim Lewis who were kind of spearheading that? What's your take on all that?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think my instinct certainly is there was maybe a little bit more to what happened with Edu, but I've not got anything to back that up because every discussion I've had about it is the same message has come back, and that there was no issue. He just got offered another job that he thought was a really good opportunity. It gave him a lot more power, looking after different clubs across all areas of the world, and he really appealed to that. And he gets a massive fat pay rise. And so that's every discussion I've had, that has come back. So I agree. The instinct feels like, why would you leave Arsenal though before you finished the thing you really set out to do? And so you immediately think there's something more to this. But I've never had that backed up from any discussion I've had, and I've never, it's never been reported by anyone else who would, same as me, who've been asking those questions. I do think his departure has made things difficult, certainly in January. I just, as much as people tell me that Jason is well respected and people at the club like him, and that he was always with Edu and during his time, and that he's well known across Europe and everything like that, he's still the interim. You remember when you were at school and you had an interim teacher come in and take the class? You never quite had that same fear over them or respected them like you did the real teacher. You always thought you could probably get away with a little bit more. And I think in any workplace, even in high power football, you still probably feel that way when you know the guy you're talking to isn't permanently in charge and might not be in the role in a few months' time. And so I do think the sporting director situation at Arsenal absolutely needs to be resolved. I get that they've taken the time, they want to make the right appointment, but whether it's going to be Jason, whether it's going to be one of the other candidates they've been speaking to behind the scenes, I think they need to get a hold of it now, because it can't be allowed to carry on, because I do think it probably impacted January. You do not want it to impact the summer, not just in terms of transfers, but contract renewals as well, which is a really important situation that is sort of looming at Arsenal with some key players. So
Saliba, Big Gabby, right?
Gabriel, all in, they're all approaching the final 2 years, which is the kind of the stage where things start to get nervy from that point onwards. And we've seen Liverpool, when they had that little period when Richard Hughes left and there was a sort of, who's going to be sporting director. And we saw in that time, certain renewals weren't sorted out. And now they're at the point where, although they've got a sporting director in place again, those renewals, Salah, Van Dijk, Trent, are all coming to a head now. And we don't want to be in that same situation. We're already seeing Real Madrid to Saliba stuff. Saliba to Real Madrid stuff coming out in the media in Spain. And that's going to only continue. Anyone who lived through Vieira to Real Madrid knows exactly what I'm talking about. So that needs to be resolved. And I do think it was an issue this January, and it can't be allowed to happen again for the summer.
Yeah. We're talking about the spine of the team here, aren't we? With, those three players, and we've come this far. And a lot of listeners are asking, and we'll get to that at the end, about who stays, who goes, if we win or lose. But I just want to kind of arc the Arteta part of the conversation, because some fans, you mentioned it at the Wolves game, I felt so bad for Kai Havertz. And not only have I felt bad for him, look, he earns a lot of money. He needs to be a better finisher, but I'm also of the volition that he does so much for this team and is asked to do so much as a team, a forward going backwards. Same with Martinelli, same with Saka, winning duels, the Arteta philosophy. He's also brought some dark arts to the team, physicality up front, so good off the ball. I just think he's underappreciated. And at the same time, if you are playing in that position, which, by the way, isn't the reason why you were, brought to the club in the first place, but you've ended up there, you've got to deliver, right? And I feel like he's that type of player that feels the pressure and it's insurmountable. Unforgivable, the miss against Manchester City. Unforgivable, the Manchester United FA Cup. Of course, those things as a professional footballer, you've got to perform at your optimum level, Charles. But so much... We've seen the history of Arsenal, Wenger with Jack Wilshere, Fabregas, and of course, Arteta's learned from Pep and from Arsene. We've seen it with Saka, with Martinelli. It was Emile Smith-Rowe and Saka. When Emery left, he took over. They kind of became the saviours of the team, relying on the youngsters. This is why I get scared about putting too much pressure on Lewis Skelly, too much pressure on Waneri. Here we go now. We're asking to rely on a 17-year-old to be the saviour of the season up front, potentially, as well as the incompetence of the executives in lack of investment at the right time and to build on squads. Didn't build on Santi and Ozil and Alexis Sanchez. Didn't get them a good DM, didn't get them good CBs, right? And here we are again, where we've got the defence and we've fixed that part that has always been like our Achilles heel, but we've lacked doing it up front. But all that aside, do you think over the last 2.5 seasons, Mikel has really put too much pressure on a starting 11? And we're seeing the consequences of it now. You talked about subs, Champions League games, winning, losing, pulling players. Even though you have a thin squad, if it's overthrow on a body, right? What do you think about that? Is there validity to this conversation?
I think there is some validity to it. I do think this season is a bit of an outlier, though, because you look at the injuries. It's not just Arsenal that this is happening to. It's happening across the board. There's been no break in football for 2 years now for most of these players. And I think that that is, a real issue. Look at what's going on down the road at Spurs. You look at what's happened at Manchester City this season. Injuries are just absolutely commonplace. Players are being run into the ground. I think Mikel can certainly improve the way he rotates players and uses players. I think that's been his sort of major negative sort of thing, a mark against his name in the last couple of seasons. There was definitely opportunities last season, but then on the whole, you look at the injuries last season, and the team and the squad handled them pretty well and managed them well. So I'm a bit reticent this season to really hammer home the sort of issue about injuries, just because I look at what's going on at every other club, and I just think players are being totally run into the ground and mismanaged by the authorities in terms of how much football they're having to play. I mean, you look at, we're in a really fortunate position in a way that we're not in that World Club Cup or whatever rubbish it's called that's coming up this summer. Because you look at Chelsea and Manchester City, they haven't had a break last season. They played all last season. All their players went to the Euros. They come straight back, played this season. Now they're going off to the summer to play that. And I think if they get to the final, they get about a 2-week break before the season starts again. It's basically going to be 3 years of wall-to-wall football for them, which is just ridiculous. So, I'm not glossing over the question about Arteta. I think he
and you're getting it. Of course, there's some people in chat who are talking about stop defending the club, stop defending Arteta. I don't think that's what we're doing here at all. I think we're blaming the hierarchy for not investing. Charles made it clear about the summer transfer window, how that was a grand failure and how it looks even worse now. He's talking about earlier how Arteta could have made subs earlier, but rightly pointing out, I mean, I know we hate Tottenham, but their injuries are a joke and they've played less football. Last season, Newcastle decimated. Manchester City this season, tons of injuries. It's like milk the cow and monetize the game and play. And when Rodri said, what he said about player health and all that, a lot of people came down on him, but it is a factor.
It's definitely a factor. It can't not be. It's absolutely a factor. Look, Arteta needs to get better at how he rotates his players and uses his players. I think that's, we've all seen that. We've all said that. But I do think football has got a very, very big problem in terms of how much they're using these players, and they will end up striking. I don't think what Rodri said is going to be was just a threat. It is going to happen. The players at the top level, they're playing too much football, and it's affecting the result as much. I don't think the Premier League's been great this season, and I think that has been down to the fact that the players just aren't at their optimum standards because they're absolutely knackered. And you're seeing them drop, and you're losing the best players as well to injuries, which is, you want to see the best players on the pitch, don't you? You don't want to see them injured all the time. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to play. I feel like Arsenal, Arteta, the owners, whoever, have absolutely let Kai Havertz down this season. They've put far too much demands on him. They've run him into the ground, and now he's out for the season. And they've only got themselves to blame for that, because they could have managed it, and they should have managed it miles better than they did. And January was an abject failure, what they've done. But that doesn't take away from the fact that there is too much football, and you just look at all the other teams in the country at the moment, pretty much, aside from Liverpool, ironically, and so many of their best players just aren't playing this season, or haven't been playing this season, because they're just injured. And
we were the lucky ones last season, Charles. Well, we had some injuries, here and there for time out, but I mean, this season, sometimes players just break down as well. But there's no doubt
you need to protect yourselves against that. And Arsenal defensively, they've had lots of injuries defensively this season, but they've coped with that because the squad has been built to be able to deal with that, because we've got lots of defenders. But at the other end of the pitch, we just haven't been able to deal with it because the planning's not been there, and they haven't been able to deal with it. You've got to be able to protect yourselves, and Arsenal haven't done that. They've left themselves light. They took a big gamble. We said it in the summer, said it again in January, and now that gamble has backfired in the space of a couple of weeks. And I mean, in my view, it is, I know it's Liverpool versus Everton tonight, and all eyes are going to be on that. If Everton can do it, there's only going to be a 6 points gap. But I don't see a way that Arsenal can chase Liverpool down between now and the end of the season. I just feel that they're not going to win enough games now, because they're not going to score enough goals. And they've only got themselves to blame for that, because it was a situation they could have avoided and they could have prepared for far better.
Totally agree. And, it was hard enough as it is with Havertz and having Saka. Now you've lost your forward line pretty much. And Carol, I think this is interesting because I heard someone else talking about this. It's like, would they have been better off having a week off? I mean, I know you've got to keep the limbs going. You've got to stay hot. You've got to stay tight. We can't say last season it was the making of us and this season. But in particular with Kai Havertz, intense training, knowing he's exhausted. He was coming back from an injury. He was probably playing with this injury, Charles, the whole time. Let's be honest. Would it have been better to say to Kai, just go lay on a beach, just go put your towel out and lay down for 7 days?
Certainly feels like that now, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know how intense the training was, if it was intense or not. I think there was people who are over there watching it when he got injured, and I think someone who was actually there witnessed it said he got injured training, doing a set piece drill. So if that is the case, and there was someone there who videoed him limping off, I think that video only emerged last night because there was a fan who decided not to post it at the time. But he said that he actually got injured during a set piece drill. So I don't know whether how intense the training was or not. But ultimately now you look at it and think if only they had just been given a week off to go and sit on the beach. I don't know. Can you do that though? If you're a football club and you've got a big game coming up this weekend, can you realistically just say to the players, go and have 7 days off?
No, just him. Just him.
Oh, just Kai, yeah.
Yeah. Just Kai.
I definitely wish they had.
Yeah. So, I'm not saying the whole team. Get that Calafiori working. Dude's had enough time off as it is. Mohammed, you keep putting this in there, and I'm just going to put it up because I've watched Carlos Vela play for LAFC for the last few years. He's been brilliant here, right? He became a superstar here. He came back. He looked like he had been eating a bit too much. I'm not going to but he looked like he was in the twilight of his career, and rightly so. He should be enjoying his life. Giroud's playing up front. You want to get Giroud back as well while we're at it? Carlos Vela is not the answer. I don't know if you're just trolling me and that you've put that up there a few times.
Is Carlos Vela still? I thought he'd retired. Is he still actually playing at LA?
He came back to LAFC for the playoffs last season. But he didn't get a look in at all. I think it was one of those where he gets to retire as an LAFC player. That's kind. And Giroud's kind of generally been a bit of a big bust here, but not his fault. The way they play with speed. They play a little bit like Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, and Giroud, as we know, is not the fastest. So it hasn't been. They've adapted to his style a little bit towards the end of the season, but yeah, maybe he'll have a better season this season, but. Giroud for backup goalkeeper in the summer. Yeah, maybe. Okay, let's wrap on this before I get you out on some questions. 400 of you and plus in live chat here on YouTube. Please hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Great conversation with Charles. I know that a lot of you are really angry with Mikel Arteta, and I can see it in the chat, right? And here we've got a very respectful, kind community, but an honest one. All right. And if you vent your opinion with respect, I'll always put all the comments up. We don't have super chats. I try to get as many of your comments up as possible. Charles, there's a lot of anger towards Mikel Arteta. And there are fans who want to be right and who have said, I told you so. I told you so. I think fans also forget how in the gutter we were and how bad it was. How we fell out of love with players, the club. Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe come in that season and really kind of ignite our passion for the team again. Yeah, then you had the apathy era of Mustafi and Ozil and Kolasinac. It just felt like soulless, right? Emery came in, wasn't supported the same way Mikel has. Let's be honest about that. Also, the hierarchy was different. And he was battling his own, situation, wanting Zaha, getting Pepe. Emery wasn't given the tools. He also had a struggle at that time communicating. Brilliant manager. For me, I have a lot of respect for Emery. And he's made Villa look great where Steven Gerrard couldn't even and got them in a relegation battle. Mikel and Edu really bring the passion back, having worn the badge, to Arsenal. but passion isn't enough for a lot of fans. Going to the game isn't enough. Participating the journey. They want to get to the final destination. I understand that. I miss winning the Premier League. Our prowess in Europe is really poor. What do you say to Arsenal fans who want Mikel Arteta out? Do you still see Mikel as the man to take this team forward?
Do I? Yeah, absolutely, I do. What do I say to fans who want him out? It's that everyone's got their own opinion, aren't they? They deserve, quite right, to have their own opinion. I think Arteta's in that stage now, I think, where he just has to deliver the league title or the Champions League because he's raised expectations so much in a short space of time. You know, I mean, Arsenal, it's like we're talking here like Arsenal are 10th in the league. They're second in the league and they've had to deal with an awful lot this season. Yet they're on the longest unbeaten run in the Premier League in Arteta's since he's arrived at the club, you know, despite all the injuries. So, and they're second in the league and they waltz through in the Champions League, finishing third in the group phase. So, you know, they're a very, very strong team. But the fact is that Arteta and Edu and everyone else, the players, have raised expectations to such a level now because we are such a good team that it's like, where do you go? If you finish second a couple of years ago in a row, where do you go from that? The only way up is first. And if you don't finish there, then it's deemed by many as a failure. And I understand that. And that's the expectation that he's brought. And it's up to him to try and deliver what we all crave and what he craves. I still absolutely think he's the right man for the job. I don't see anything otherwise. I think this season's there's going to be lots of regrets about this season because City have obviously fallen off. And I think we all thought that if City fall off, that, you know, Arsenal were going to be the team to take advantage of it. But they haven't. Obviously, Liverpool have been absolutely fantastic. Look, Mikel Arteta has his flaws. There's no doubt about that. And some of those flaws are being exposed right now in terms of how he looks after the team and looks after some of the players. And I think these injuries, there's a direct correlation to how many minutes these players have played. But I still think he's the right man for the job. I don't really see anyone else that I'd want at Arsenal right now ahead of him to sort of rip it up and go again. I don't think we're at that stage. I think we might be at that stage in another year or 2 seasons if he hasn't managed to get Arsenal over the line. It wouldn't surprise me if he feels that way the same as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I still feel he's the right man for the job.
You know, I do, and I put my hands up at the beginning. We had a conversation. I was not a believer, but I just don't understand how you can't see how he's transformed the club. Even if you don't like him, we're the team that's been competing for the Premier League consistently for the last 3 seasons. I think it's things like...
everyone's disappointed that we're not going to win the league this season. I mean, is that not just the ultimate...
Do you know what I think?
3 or 4 years ago, we were never in that position to be able to dream of winning the league.
No.
But now we're disappointed that we're not going to win the league. And that just shows, you know, where he's taken the club in still a relatively short space of time. Also,
Charles, to finish third in the Champions League, and look, and people will be like, oh, that's a trophy for you. No, that was a very kind of new format, exciting. I didn't like it at the beginning. And I was like, man, this is actually really cool. Man City and Real Madrid are meeting this soon. We finished top 3 with Liverpool and Barcelona. Do you know what I think it is? I think it's because Manchester City have fallen so far, right, in terms of results. And by the way, they could still finish second. I mean, it's not over yet. We could still finish first. I mean, I know it's difficult, but mathematically, it's not over yet. And it's because Arne Slot, in his first season, is having this success, and we call it success because it's Arne Slot and Liverpool, and that he potentially, you know, is on for it. It was a quadruple, now it's a treble. Let's see how long that lasts, Charles. It's because he's doing so well in his first season. And my counter to that is he inherited almost like a Lamborghini. And Mikel Arteta and Emery, both of them, inherited a Skoda. And
yeah, it's incomparable, the two. I mean, it's still an amazing job by Arne Slot, and he's done fantastically. But he walked
brilliant.
This time last season, everyone was talking about Liverpool winning the quadruple under Jurgen Klopp. You know, there's not been a massive fall off. They probably, you know, you go back to the day when Arsenal sort of basically lost the title last season, was when they lost to Villa, wasn't it? Earlier that day, Liverpool lost at home to Palace, I think, and they started that day, I think, in command of the title. Then they lost, and then Arsenal lost, and by the end of the day, Man City were in command of the title. But, you know, Liverpool, right up until that stage, looked like they were the favourites at one stage and going for the quadruple. So, they've got an amazing squad. Arne Slot must have walked in there on the first day, looked around the change room, just oh my God, this is unbelievable. What manager gets to walk into a squad like this? And, Mikel Arteta walked into his squad after a half-empty Emirates Stadium, looking around the squad thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's incomparable where the two were. And that is not taking nothing away from Slot. What he's done is unbelievable. But you can't compare the two situations, where Liverpool were and where Arsenal were. Liverpool were a fantastic team built with title winners and still are a fantastic team that has been built around title winners and some of the best players in the world in their position. Arsenal didn't have that. Arteta didn't have that. But again, that's not absolving Mikel Arteta. It's like you say anything like that and it's like, oh, you're defending Arteta. It's like,
right. Exactly.
It's not. It's just context. It's just fact. And that in football now, I think no one it's very hard to put context across and put fact across without it look like you're defending things. So you're right. People are either entrenched with one view or entrenched with the other view, and anything in between when you're trying to sort of bring context to it.
It's not fashionable.
It's not fashionable, and people don't want to listen to it. So, and I understand that. It's just where we are in football, but when not just football in the world, to be fair. But it is, that's my view, and I'll always look to sort of try and bridge between the two, and I think that is important.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take you into the VAR added time. So I got 4 minutes, and I've got to get you out on these, and we can promise to come back and we could do like a Q&A with you, with the listeners. That would be great if you could come back at a later date and we could do like a Q&A with you. That would be fun.
Absolutely.
All right. Who plays up front? What does it look like, Charles?
I have no idea. I mean, I'm going to Leicester. I'll be in the press box on Saturday, and I'm genuinely intrigued about what he's going to do. I think it has to be Trossard, doesn't it? As your central, I know he's bigged up Ranieri, but playing a 17-year-old in a role they've never played before in a Premier League game, I think that might be a tough ask. It just naturally feels like it would be Trossard, Sterling, and Ranieri. I think there's a good shout for changing formation now. I don't think he will do it because he's so stuck in his ways in terms of how he wants the team to play. But I do wonder if wing backs are the way to go now, just because then at least you've got one attacking player you've left on the bench that you can bring on. Because right now it looks like these three are going to have to basically play 90 minutes every single game. But no, if I'd be putting money on it right now, who plays as the forward or the false nine, it would be Trossard, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So I have another one for you. And I'm only doing this because people have been a bit wacky, and I love our fans because I love it when they get wacky. Is there a wild card up front for you?
It's not going to be Calafiori.
I'm like, he barely takes a risk starting Ranieri when Odegaard's injured, and you think he's going to start Calafiori up front, who in his super early career, probably when he was 9 years old, Charles, was a striker.
They probably all were, though, Sophie, weren't they? They're all strikers when they're 9 years old. I think if there's a wild card, it's got to be Marino, maybe, but God, I don't want to see that. I really don't want to see that. It would be, I'd much rather switch a formation and play, have Trossard playing centrally or something. I don't want to see Marino up front. I think that's, oh God, even just talking about it, it just feels like the end of these next 3 months are going to be such a grind. They really are. What we're going to.
They're going to be long. They're going to be.
And I Saka back so quickly. We need it. We really do. But then there's that fear as well of rushing him back just to sort of make up for it, and we can't afford to do that. So
exactly, Charles. And also, I tell you this, and I don't care. People are at me, throw darts at me. If by some miracle, in a season where no one expects you to do absolutely nothing, right? And then you'll do something. These same fans will be asking for a statue of Mikel Arteta outside the Emirates if he does the unthinkable. Even if he gets this team back to a semi-final or a final in the Champions League in this state, it would be unbelievable. Probably not going to happen, but what? Stranger things have happened in stranger seasons.
Yeah. I think we need to go full on Greece in Euro 2004 now, between now and the end of the season, and
I'm all for that.
Absolutely set piece our way to the Champions League final and nick it in that way. I think it's going to be a real struggle. But you've got to play to your strengths, right? And right now, Arsenal's strengths are in defence. They've got no attack. So Arsenal's and we are fortunate to have a very good defence, by the way, and that might keep us in things. It might keep us in games, especially in Champions League where it's more of a cup competition. I do think it's going to be a grind. I don't think it's going to be much fun the next few months, unfortunately. And again, that's all Arsenal's fault and they're entirely to blame for this situation. But there is still football to be played. There is still a chance of doing something, and they've got to play to their strengths. And if that means, going even more defensive, it means set pieces, whatever. If that's the way you win, then that's the way you got to do it. So yeah, we'll see. But I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be the most. It's not been an entertaining season, to be fair.
No,
anyway, but
been brutal.
Brutal. It's not been fun, and I don't think it's going to get any funner.
Well, Charles, thanks so much for your time. I know you got to go. I'm going to stay on for a little bit here. Make some wrong rights and rights wrong. Thank you so much for joining. Follow Charles @Charles_Watts. And if you haven't bought his book, Revolution: The Rise of Arteta's Arsenal, please go check it out as well. Charles, at ease. Thanks for joining. See you soon.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Okay. Bye, mate. Bye. That's Charles Watts. Please make sure you go follow him. What's going on, kids? 470 of you in live chat. Let's thank Charles for his time. He's very honest there, I think. Sometimes maybe with what he's saying, if he was screaming and shouting, maybe some of you would digest it with more joy, right? But sometimes people say things in a certain tone and you still get a sense, the club are culpable, the board are culpable. I've defended the owners a lot. They're culpable. This kind of makeshift hierarchy that has been spearheading our January transfer window totally ballsed it up. No doubt about that. Mikel Arteta overplaying players, squeezing as much juice as he can out of those starting 11. I mean, we didn't even mention Benjamin White. Timber's played a lot since he's come back from injury. Calafiori, he was injury prone before we bought him. So there was a little mini red flag there. Thomas Partey has been in and out of the squad over the seasons. Martinelli, again, injured. Jesus, injured again. I mean, there are a lot of questions, and I do not blame fans for having tons of questions. I don't blame fans for being angry and for being frustrated. I really don't. I tell you what I don't like, though, is this. I'm going to put it up here. Where is it? From T Junior 2109. Soph, honestly, I think you're misrepresenting the actual fan base here. It is the process that people are annoyed with. So TJ Junior 2109, you can always come in and chat with me about it. How am I misrepresenting the fan base? The beautiful thing about sports, about music, about film, entertainment in general, art, is subjective, right? Your opinion may be different to mine. I'm not misrepresenting a group of people because I don't stand for everybody. I stand for me, for myself. And collectively, we built a community here where we can talk honestly and go back and forth. They're not representing me. I'm not representing them. So it's comments like that I have to call out because I'm just providing an opinion. Listen, I've been there angry. I've been supersonic Soph. I've been through those days. I've been through that time. And what I've discovered is that I can't change any narrative. I don't have control over it. What I do have control over is my emotions. Now, inside, I'm seething, but I'm not going to scream and shout and be vitriolic and send abusive messages to Mikel Arteta and Kai Havertz. I'm just not that person. I'm not going to do that. Maybe it's because I've gotten older, but doesn't mean I don't feel angry. Doesn't mean I don't feel like the club have let everybody down. It doesn't mean like Kai Havertz has just been hung out to dry. But you know what? When a family member goes through a really hard time, right? Are you going to kick them while they're down, or are you going to support them through their adversity? Because I've been told so much that football is about family, right? Now, some fans just go to the stadium. They go to games. They just want to win, right? I think every fan who goes to the football wants their team to win. I did something which is in the video section at the start of the season. What does it mean to be a fan? And the whole point of that short video was support the Arsenal any way you want. I'm not going to judge you and you're not going to judge me. As long as you're not abusive and vitriolic and downright disgraceful in being racist, misogynistic, call it what you want. You be the fan you want to be. I'll be the fan I want to be. And if you have a minute to go watch that video, I would actually really appreciate it. And we keep judging each other as Arsenal fans. We load the gun with the ammo, and all the opposing fans, the pundits, the media love to fire it right back at us. We do this to ourselves. If you want to have a meltdown, go ahead and have a meltdown. There's different audiences. There's different places to go to have that type of interaction. And I'm not judging that. I'm just not there anymore. I can't do that anymore. And maybe part of that has been doing a show with Super Kev and kind of seeing it from the player side day in, day out, understanding a little bit more about the sacrifices, the things it takes, and also maybe my losses in life have made me realize I don't have the energy to put into being angry. And we all digest things differently. So I go back to the family member being down. I'm not going to kick my family member when they're down. I'm going to support them. And I do think Arsenal football is a community. Why are there so many YouTube channels? Why do you go to the same restaurant or the same pub before the game? You know, why do you buy merchandise? Because you belong to something. You feel part of something that is a little bigger than yourself. And for some people, that something means everything. For some people, that's all they've got in their life. But others, they have other interests and they're able to compartmentalize when Arsenal win and when Arsenal lose. But the whole thing with football, you hear players talk about it. If someone passes away, if someone retires, the greats, part of the football family. And that's been around for years and years and years. And there are a lot of Arsenal supporters who feel part of that football family. And there's something I'm working on right now, which has helped me get through my very difficult year. And I'll let you guys know about it, but it's because of football. It's because of supporters. I'm in a WhatsApp group with a group of Arsenal women. And I tell you, sometimes getting through the game is because of those women. When we play away, mostly we're all in the WhatsApp group. And sometimes when we're playing at home, 2 or 3 of the girls are in the stadium. We've got someone in the Middle East. We've got someone in America. But what brings us together for that time is the club, is our team, supporting something, feeling something outside of your normal life where you just get to, let the steam go. That's important to me. I want to win. I want to win so badly. I want to win the Champions League. I want to win the Premier League. I wanted to win the League Cup this season badly because I felt like it could galvanize us, get that team to taste what it's like to win something together. They're like, oh man, if it feels this good to win the League Cup, what would it feel like to win the Premier League? That's the part of the culture that Arteta and this team haven't cracked yet. And who's to say what will happen? It's going to be tremendously difficult this season. But until we win something big, we will never get the respect, not only from ex-players, the media, pundits, opposing fans, from our own fans. Mikel Arteta, for some, TikTok is on the clock. And that's fine. That's your opinion. I just think there's a little bit left here. And whoever's to blame for not reinforcing and bringing in support for these players who I think have totally tried this season and unfortunately may be tired, out of form. Worst thing is being out of form all at the same time. That's happened a lot. I'm not going to blame the refs, but it's a factor. Adversity comes in all forms, shapes, and sizes. And Arsenal have had that thrown at them. The adversity kitchen sink has been thrown at Arsenal. And, you know, we're going to see how this ends. But if you think it's not going to end well, I respect that. If you're a dreamer like me, you know what? Helps keep me going. But either way, you support the Arsenal how you want. Don't let anyone dictate how you should support the club. Right. Thank you for allowing me that. Well, it is my show. I guess I could say what I want. Runs with Cow says it's probably all my fault. I'm sorry. You're so funny. Let's see. The Cronkies don't deserve to own Arsenal. Who does then? We can't point fingers at our family members for screwing up. I mean, you know, happens a lot in family. Forgiveness is a really big thing. Yeah, win the dog. If you don't like it, leave. Yeah, okay, real talk. Thank you, Cronkies out. We've got, you know, we want to win, Sophie, but the Cronkies have shown the same willingness. The pathway they have taken hasn't worked. Preach, great perspective. Life's so hard at times. People feel let down by the club, but we all need to rally together now. Absolutely. Arsenal always do this to themselves. Yeah, I mean, there's a pattern. That I can't deny that. Absolutely a pattern that, you know, we are respectful in this group. Chief Like Officer, well said. He ain't getting nothing. We'll deal with that on Friday. Reality's tough. Deal with it. Support and love. How you think Spurs fans are feeling. Manchester United. What about them? I actually think their rock bottom is worse than our rock bottom. I don't know if you guys agree with me or not. But, yeah. I'll be there next weekend, 4:30 in West LA, striker or not, it's a community. MK, my girl, Los Angeles. MK's okay from the fires. I was happy to see that. Keep being you and telling your truth. Absolutely adore you, MK. Soph! From one Soph to another, giving me goosebumps. You fucking rock. Well, I feel the same way about you, girl. Let's see, what else do we have? We support you to stop flapping your gums about sob stories. Yeah, see, that's okay. But yet you've got Win the Dog as your photo and he looks like he's flapping his gums right there. Maybe you need to change that image a little bit. Supersonic Sophie was awesome. Used to keep us engaged. Wow, well, you're still here. So you're not engaged anymore? Crikey, I love it. Tough love is a thing. Yep. You can criticize and disagree without being disrespectful. Totally agree. You know, today would be a day. Today would be a day where I just want to highlight it's the last Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. If anyone's going to do us a favor for a result today, even though I know it's going to be impossible, it's that guy up there, Super Kev. He would have been at Goodison Park today. He would have been commentating on the game. He would have been part of the whole event, everything encompassed in all of that. So all the love to Everton Football Club today. Enjoy your last Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. I just think the stars are aligned for an Everton win. Again, maybe, just maybe, I've gone a little too far in my dream world. But I tell you what, I won't stop dreaming. I'll be a realist, but I won't stop dreaming. All right, squaddies, thanks to Charles Watts. Thanks to you. You know how much I love you. Look out on the community page for the next live show. Until then, don't forget to tell your loved ones you love them. Enjoy the football tonight and aye, squaddies, aye.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Oh my God, they've put Arteta program. Anyway, love you guys. Night night.